Hello everyone, welcome back. Sorry I haven't posted in a while. Today we're reviewing the Canon 200D. So for those of you that just want a quick summary, this isn't just the best Canon starter camera, I think it's the best entry-level camera out there on the market at the moment. I picked this up a few months back for about £500 with the 18 to 55 kit lens, the one that comes pretty standard across the whole Canon range. The reason I actually got the one with the lens, even though I already had the kit lens, was I picked this up in the silver body to differentiate from the 100D I'm shooting this on, and having a silver kit lens, which I don't really use too much, differentiates it from the better quality lenses like the Sigma 18 to 35 I'm shooting this on, the Canon 11 to 20, and the Canon 50mm, the Nifty 50, the 1.8, basically so that I know not to grab this one from my bag. But overall, it's a great little camera, so let's get started on the comparisons. So we're going to compare the 200D to the 100D it replaces in the Canon range. In fairness to the 100D, it's marginally lighter, 400 grams versus about 450. In every other area you could want though, the 200D just blows it out of the water. The resolution has been bumped from 18 megapixels up to 24, being more of a standard resolution across a lot of companies and a lot of models. You'll find Panasonics, Fujis, Nikon, Sonys and Canons, they're all shooting 24 megapixels because it's a really comfortable level of detail to work with. It's not overly sharp. You can get 40 or 50 megapixels from some of the high-end bodies out there now, but it's more than enough for portraits and prints, landscapes, all the real sort of cornerstones of photography. This 24 megapixel sensor will shoot just fine. Beyond that, the battery life has really been improved. You've gone from 380 shots on the 100D up to 650 shots on the 200D. Having that extra battery life means you've not got the constant anxiety and swapping that I am dealing with shooting video on this camera right now. I've got 3 batteries on the go at any time, one in the camera, one charging, one ready to go, and I just rotate them as needed. Not going to have to do that as much with this camera. A second will probably be helpful, but it's not the end of the world. I can shoot on a single battery for most of the day when I need to. For video, there are 2 big differences as well. The first is 60p video is now available on this entry-level camera. Before you had 24, 25, 30, but that was your limit. Now you've got 48, 50, 60 for when you really need it. You can do that slow-mo. It's not super slow-mo, it's just half speed, but for B-roll footage and inserts, it looks fantastic compared to the 100D at full speed. Beyond that, the other major difference for video shooters will be dual pixel autofocus built in on this camera. The 100D uses the hybrid CMOS system. It's good, it's sharp enough and it's great for photography, but it does tend to fade in and out, it does tend to hunt a little bit. This is much sharper, quicker and holds focus much better. This is the gold standard for video autofocus now. And it's on an entry-level camera for about £500. What more could you really want on that front? Lastly, there are a couple of big ergonomic changes. The reason it's a little bit heavier is actually you've now got a fully articulating flip-out screen. So for vlogging, rather than having to set up a big monitor and flip it 180 degrees so I can see myself and frame a shot, I can just flip the screen around and shoot like that when I need to. Really, really speeds things up. The other big ergonomic difference is actually here on the grip. Now this groove is much deeper than on the 100D. I've got fairly chunky hands, they're not huge, but this feels so much more comfortable in the hand. And a big difference is in the confidence you get with it. Because these are Rebel bodies, they're still a little bit plasticky, they are an entry-level camera after all, you're only paying a few £100s for it. Having this deeper groove means you can be more confident when you're holding it, get the shot you need without worrying so much about the camera in your hands. So in every area, this is a big upgrade on the 100D, and I personally would not recommend that camera to anyone while this is available at a similar price. Now, in comparison to the 80D, this is where things get a bit more modelled, because there are pros and cons on either side. In favour of the 200D, it's got the exact same image sensor, it's lighter, it's smaller, it's easier to use, and you've got the guide, which makes it a great starter camera that they've started incorporating on a lot of their new cameras now. The M50 has it as well. Really makes things easier when you're starting out. In favour of the 80D, it has got an even bigger battery. It's better weather sealing. It's generally aimed at a slightly higher end market, so it's about twice the price. Now, for my money, I would personally think if you're starting out, there's no question, start with the 200D. Smaller and lighter means you're more likely to keep it with you, less bulky, takes up less room in your bag, so you can actually take more photos carrying this around. The other big difference is if you're going to spend £1,000 on a camera, why not jump that little bit further to something like a 70, where you've got dual card slots and it's aimed more at the professional market. So I don't really see too much of a place for the 80D in the lineup anymore, especially because this has got the same autofocus, but it's got the Digic 7 processor, the next generation compared to the 80D. So I feel like if you've got the 80D, don't worry, it's a brilliant camera. But at the moment, I can see a split in their users between whether it's just something easy they need and they go for the 200D, or jumping up to still keeping the APS-C size to keep the lenses the same and looking at the 70. I personally don't think there's too much of a need for the 80D anymore. Okay, so the last of the moderately affordable Canon cameras I'm going to compare the 200D to is the M50. This camera is the reason the review's taken a few months to come out. I wanted to see a little bit more about this camera before I compared it to the 200D, just in case that was a better option for people. Now, it's a very good camera. It is mirrorless, so on that front you're getting more shooting speed. It shoots up to 10 frames per second. This is going to handle about 5 on the mechanical shutter, and obviously mirrorless, it's even smaller and lighter. Whereas the Canon 100D was 400 grams and this is around the 450 mark, the M50 is around about 390, so it's lighter than both of them. It does have the articulating screen as well, so it's not just smaller, but it's got some of the ergonomic features of the 200D. But what it doesn't have is this deeper grip, so it isn't as comfortable in the hand, and it's even lighter, so it just feels a bit more delicate. Now, if you're comparing it as a stills camera, pretty much the same sensor, 24 megapixels, same sensor size. Like I said, bit of a faster shooting speed, 10 frames per second, and well, I guess it's mirrorless, so you've got the EVF with a bit more information on it and better autofocus points, and it's using the Digic 8. But for video, it really is a mixed bag. The HD's good, it's just as good as the 80D and the 200D, both shoot brilliant, full HD, 1080p. But the 4K, which has become a bit of a selling point for the M50, I would argue is unusable. Going from their HD to their 4K, you lose dual pixel autofocus, which to my money is the only reason you'd want a Canon over something like a Sony or a Panasonic at the moment, that better autofocus for video at a certain price point. And you get such a tight crop factor that even the wider EFM lenses don't really do a huge amount for it. It crops so tight that you're having to go as wide as you can with the lenses, and of course then you tend to lose a bit of image quality. You get a lot of barrel distortion and kind of a fisheye look. I'm not a big fan of it, and especially the 4K. So for me, the M50 is a great jump to make an entry-level mirrorless camera that's quite affordable. It's a similar price to the 200D, it's only a little bit more. But I still think at the moment for Canon, their DSLRs at the equivalent price point are better value for money than their mirrorless. In the next few years that is going to change, of course. Mirrorless is the way forward, but Canon hasn't gotten there yet in terms of cannibalising their own DSLR market to make it better mirrorless. They've pretty much got sort of, their fans either way. I personally veer at the moment towards the DSLRs. 5 years time I know it'll be different. But for now, I can't really recommend the M50 over this because of that unusable cropped 4K with the worst autofocus. I don't really know why a video shooter would look at that over this. Like I said, there's some benefits for stills, but I still find the comfort and the ergonomics on this that much easier to hold it more stable, which means I can use a higher shutter speed, let more light in, and just get much better images overall. So in my view, of the three, unless you desperately need that weather sealing from the 80D and that bigger battery if you're doing more weddings and portraits, this is what you're going to want to get. So in summary, the 200D absolutely smashes it against the 100D. It's got the M50 beat on a lot of user-friendliness features and comfort, and on the 80D it's just a more compact size, a little bit more comfortable to hold. It's that sweet spot between a tiny camera like the M50 and quite a big camera like the 80D. My advice would be to anyone starting, this is where you start. The 80D has some features that do make it very attractive for certain types of photographers. For video, I would still probably go with the 200D. It's a little bit smaller, and it means you don't need as big a tripod and rig to get it working. But this is where you'd start with most shooters. Hybrid shooters, still shooters, and video shooters. And after that is where you'd veer off. If you're more into stills, your next jump would be the 7D, or maybe up to a full frame like the 6D or the 5D. Something with dual card slots, something with that bigger battery, that weather sealing, really rugged, tough cameras, great for all day kind of photo shooting. For video, this is about as good as you're going to get in their DSLR market at the moment for video. Yes, there's 4K on the 5D Mark III, but at the moment, my advice would be, instead of spending all that money on a DSLR that can shoot video, start with this, get into video, learn the tricks of the trade a little bit, and then when the time comes, jump up to the cinema camera range. Something like a C100 or a C300 will give you much more video features and flexibility. And if you want 4K, the C300 is the better of the two. If you want ridiculous battery life, the C100 is the way to go. But I would advise those for video shooters over the 5D any day, especially because if you've started with this and keep this as a B camera, you've got that second angle when you need it, but you've got a great stills camera to keep using afterwards as well. So I think overall this is the best starter camera on the market. I know I've only really discussed Canon in this video. I'm more familiar with it. I've used a Panasonic, I've used a Sony. I love them both. I've actually never touched a Nikon camera, sadly. Would love to use it, especially the D850. It looks fantastic. But I think for starter cameras, Canon are the way to go. They are the market leaders. They do tend to be the best in terms of value for money at the lower end. And they are the ones that gave us the DSLR video revolution back in 08. Other cameras did it first, but the Canon 5D Mark II was the one that popularised it. So for me, it's always got a little bit of a special place in my heart for cinema. But yeah, for me, this is going to be my main camera for now. And when I pick up a C100 or a C300, depending on which way I go, this will become my B camera for years to come. I absolutely adore this little camera. So thank you for watching.